If you want to support the channel, please consider becoming a member today. Members get early access to videos, access to all the stream VODs, and exclusive access to emotes as well. So if you'd like to support the channel, become a member today.
A good therapist isn't someone that's going to tell you what to do or tell you that you're wrong or
Yes.
tell you to be this way or you're a narcissist, you're this, you're that, you're this. It's to help you learn how to work out the problem for yourself.
Beautiful.
Correct.
So when I go on TikTok and I look at the most popular therapists, you know what I see?
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you right there, pal. If your response is but TikTok, then you literally need to shut the f up. You literally need to stop talking, cut your mic off.
But when they get 750,000 likes, do you know what other therapists start doing? They start following that. This idea that therapy is...
Yup, therapists are getting their advice on TikTok. Oh my god! Rollo on why modern therapy is trash. Oh no.
Men, what do you think
Yes.
about men not liking to go to therapy?
Men should go to therapy. Women should go to therapy. We should all go to therapy.
Well, so the problem is what's happened to therapy. So if you're asking me, the problem is what's happened
I got
to
an
therapy.
answer, but you go first.
So the issue is, it's under the age of 30, only 5% of therapists are men. And I
Yeah.
believe what's happened is therapy has become a way to
And you see, the problem with that is that I don't like women. And so when I'm like trying to like go and talk about my feelings, like I need it to be a nice hunky man, you know, preferably with like a little bulge in the crotch, you know, dude.
pose in some ways woke ideology to men.
I agree
It is
with you.
terrible, terrible. I don't give a... Please come on my show so I can embarrass you. Anyone who disagrees with me about this,
Okay.
this concept of men being more vulnerable in the beginning of a relationship is bullshit, and it is bad game. And if a therapist...
Vulnerable how? In what way? Being too vulnerable too quickly can absolutely be a negative. You obviously want to protect yourself. You don't want to put your guard down if it's not warranted. But showing a little bit of vulnerability in the early stages of a relationship, what's wrong with that? That builds an emotional connection more than anything. That's also really valuable if you're looking to establish a meaningful relationship.
Therapists who go after Jonah Hill saying that his behavior was controlling when he's like, hey, he goes, hey, you're a beautiful person. And you're incredible, and you're smart, and I love all these things about you. And if you want to spend all your time with these other people, he goes, I support that. But maybe we're not right for each other. And that was controlling therapy. If that's what therapy is...
That's not therapy. That was a therapist. This is like saying I read a story about somebody that got sick after taking ibuprofen, so medicine. Unironically, that's the equivalent of what he's saying here. Because he read one article where he thought that the therapist had a dumb opinion. Therapy? Okay. I love how also it's always the people that are so angry at therapy who need it the most.
Now, the thing is, there are some really good therapists out there, but for me, I would have to find someone who's kind of in the same cohort as me, either prior military or even like a girl who understands like the scene or something that can, somebody who can kind of understand my ideology. Because I will tell you, there's a very big difference between a guy just living
I need a red pill therapist.
and a dude with testosterone over 1100 who's 46. Like, it's a very different existence.
Can confirm.
And I would need to know that the person that I have as a therapist is not going to... I've heard horror stories from guys going to therapy and they're being judged by their therapist. It's like, yo, you're dating multiple women at once?
Do you think people don't ever have a bad experience with therapists? Do you realize that the average person needs to try, I think it's like 3 to 5 therapists before they actually find one that they really like, that kind of like agrees with them and whatnot? Like agrees with their system, more or less, like agrees with, like they click kind of. This notion that like because you just read 1 or 2 scary stories, you're going to disregard an entire practice of medicine, like an entire medical field. This is ludicrous.
It's because you're a narcissist. That's why you're doing. It's like, what the is this shit? Like, that's what I'm talking about, right? You have, as a man, there's a period.
Oh, okay, interesting. Oh, so the guy who was shamed was actually called a narcissist by his therapist, and then what did he do? He threw a bitch fit about it. Gee, that doesn't sound like a narcissist at all, does it, everybody? Yeah, the therapist said he was a narcissist. Maybe that was a valuable insight, and you just didn't like hearing it, dude.
There's a period in your life if you want to date multiple women, you can. And there's a period of life if you want to settle down, you can. And you shouldn't be guilted for not wanting to do one thing or the other. So what I found is
Agreed. It doesn't sound like they were. It sounds like they were called a narcissist. And my guess is there was a lot more to it than just them telling that they were with multiple women.
therapy tends to be more like it. Every instance that I've heard of, it tends to be more like the feminization of men. And so that's the reason why I think a lot of men are complaining. What do you think, Rob?
Okay, so here's my deal.
Yeah, that's what we need. More men with their feelings suppressed. Just walking time bombs ready to blow the up at anyone or anything for the slightest inconvenience. That's how we get a better society. Thank you, Red Pill.
Just to tag on what he was saying is that the way we do psychology right now, the way we do therapy is all, it begins and ends from the female experience. The reason why guys are supposed to go to therapy in the first place is to get in touch.
Living in the world, the female experience. Nobody knows how it is to be a man. Nobody knows my struggle. They don't know my story or what I've been through.
For their feelings and to be more vulnerable. And so, I mean, we can run down this laundry list of like, this is what you ought to do. And all of that at the bottom of that list, the equation reads out to be more like a woman. That's what it comes to. Emote like a woman, talk like a woman, communicate like a woman, experience life like a woman. Everything else goes along. And the problem we have with this is because we don't understand today that men and women are different. And we are fundamentally, biologically, neurologically, endocrinology, in so many different ways, right down to the cellular level. Men and women are different. Our brains are, and I can show you the fMRI studies of these. Our brains are literally wired differently. So just because he didn't cry,
that's a complete. He's completely disregarding everything here. First of all, there's so much socialization that takes place when it comes to gender, when it comes to what it means to be a man, how you should express that, how you should feel about yourself. All of this is heavily gendered. There's also such a thing as neuroplasticity, it's called. And it's how the brain literally changes, morphs, evolves like it's plastic, neuroplasticity, and it will adapt and change to your environment. These guys deliver these facts to you as if it's like we're born with a brain that's just like everything is already preset up and that's just how it is. So if our brains are different, that's just how it is. They forget completely that neuroplasticity plays a massive role in the brain. That the reason the male brains or the men's brains versus the women's brains were wired differently could have been a result of neuroplasticity and a socialization process that took place regarding gender.
He might cry at the end of Saving Private Ryan, but he's not going to. He's not going to cry when Rose drops the heart of the sea down to the bottom of the ocean.
Because it was stupid. She could have let.
I also really like how they're one freaking out now about a movie. Two, you can tell they haven't been to therapy. Do you think a therapist is like, oh, you didn't cry during Titanic, you're emotionally stunted? Really? I'll tell you right now what being emotionally stunted looks like is a lot more like this guy. Really angry and uptight. Because I'm telling you right now, people are not just angry because they're angry. There's always something underlying there. That's also why I bring up the fact that anger is a secondary emotion. Because anger, although a real emotion, never exists by itself. You can never just be angry. Usually that anger is an extension of an underlying deeper emotion, usually fear, loneliness. So now let's hear this guy who doesn't need therapy and isn't emotionally stunted rage out about Titanic.
But she could have let Leonardo DiCaprio on the goddamn piece of plank. I mean, it was so dumb. You could see it. It was like right there. Just let him up on the mother.
So,
selfish ass mother.
What I hear though from the reason why I hear like you people ask this all the time, like I think that a lot of women think that therapy is in some way like makes the guy more attractive, and so guys go, oh, okay, I'll go to therapy. I'll out therapy all my competition, my intersexual competition, and so therefore I will, I'm going to be the most therapeutic.
If you're going to therapy to impress a woman, then please go to therapy.
I'm going to be the most female identifying, the most emotive, and the problem with that is men when they get into that state, it feels unnatural to them. So
because you're a simp in that regard. I'm telling you right now that if you're going to therapy to impress a woman, you're a simp. You're a loser. You need to get your priorities straight.
When women talk with other women and communicate with other women, they are doing so from the female experience. And the problem is we still think in terms of blank slate. We think men and women are just the same. So what works for a woman in our wonderfully correct female society and female correctness should theoretically work for a guy. Men, yeah. And then guys are just like, screw it, I'm going to go gun down, I'm going to express myself with an AK-47, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it comes down to.
So what is-
He's expressing.
If he's expressing himself with a weapon, then maybe isn't that an indicator that he needed therapy? I guess his point is that therapy is only operating from a female perspective, which is just bullshit. There's a whole campaign right now about that kind of stuff, about how therapy can relate to men as well. This notion that it's just from a female perspective, I don't know where he's getting this from. Where did he get this idea? Now, again, he would also tell you that we live in what he would call a gynocentric society, meaning that like women actually control the country or the society or something, because everything is from the female perspective. He brings up this point a lot. I've heard him make the exact same one when it comes to teachers as well in schools, how it's just from the female perspective. He's terrified of women. And the thing is that he's not entirely wrong. Like, of course, there are differences between men and women, males and females. There are biological differences. And then men and women, there are going to be neurological differences as well. And that's true and valid. But those differences do not make you so different that you're completely on separate planets. It's almost like he's stuck in that little kindergarten mindset. The boys go to Jupiter to get more stupid or whatever thing. Like, just if people have neurological differences, because everybody's neurologically different compared to each other, does not mean that they cannot be compatible or get along or have ultimately more similarities than differences at the end of the day as well.
Expressing his emotions is just with an assault weapon.
So what does male therapy look like?
I think male
I can tell
therapy.
you.
I think
Doing
male
push-ups.
I think male therapy is called being a performance coach. I
the
think
squat rack is what it looks like.
for sure.
Yeah.
I think-
Why,
I think-
why can that not be
What is
female
that?
therapy?
I think the notion that like you're going through a really hard time, you don't need to talk about it. You need to just go to the gym. That's bullshit. Like, maybe going to the gym will offer some relief, and it probably will reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression. But those feelings and experiences that you're trying to ignore with the gym, those aren't going to just go away. They never do.
Why can't that be female therapy?
Oh, I don't. Well, I think it can be female.
It can be,
therapy.
but
Yeah, I don't see
Yeah,
any reason
so
why it
here's,
can't.
so let me see if I can answer that a little bit, because I was actually talking about this today. When guys help other guys, it's usually because there's a project involved. The best conversations I've ever had with my brother have been about my brother reconditions and sells like auctions, classic muscle cars and classic cars at like Barrett Jackson and ESPN stuff. And so the best conversations I've ever had with him is like working on a carburetor. Like we're doing something. We're
Yes.
fishing.
Agreed.
There's something that's happening. Like there's a project that's going on, and it's an excuse to get there. And you're focusing on something. And so once your brain is sort of like in the deductive problem solving mode, that's when we have the best conversations. For women, it's like, let's go to Starbucks and catch up. It's the actual conversation
Yes.
that is enjoyable. Where
Yeah.
for guys, it's let's solve a problem together, and
progress towards achievement.
in doing so, we're going to be teamwork. We're going to form a tribe. We're going.
I mean, yeah, that's generally kind of true. It's also true that men right now don't have as many friends as they used to, say, like back in the 70s, partially because the world is just a lot less industrial now. Men do tend to bond more so over problem solving, sure. But then why do you need to like trivialize the female perspective?
We try to atomize men and isolate them. So when a guy goes through a divorce or something like that, he is like on his own. Whereas for women, they do better after a divorce because they have all these social networks. Because
This is false, by the way. Well, by what metric do women do better? Women recover faster, but at least financially, most women are worse off financially after divorce.
and they can't understand why that guy feels like he's suicidal right after a marriage or getting zeroed out, because none of his guy friends, they're all atomized too, and they're all isolated on top of that. So
he's doing the red pill thing again, where he's talking about a serious and very real issue right now with men being isolated, but then he's somehow managing to blame this on women. Like, are you telling me all the men who are isolated right now and lonely all went to therapy and were convinced by the evil whammon therapist to what? Go be alone all the time? Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Therapy like that is, I think, generalized, but I think there's deeper problems and there's deeper rooted things that people have to work through, whether men or women.
So if we're dealing with somebody who is psychotic and they go to a psychiatrist, then I agree with you.
So
I agree with you.
clinical
childhood
clinical.
trauma, sexual trauma,
Sure.
abandonment,
For sure.
Generational trauma.
children dying.
Of course.
You know, there's things like that that people really, men and women, do need to talk to somebody that can help guide them on a path for healing. Otherwise, they're going to come up with blocks in their life, right? Like mental blocks, and they're not going to be able to move forward or push through it without direction.
Yes. The difference is, I think there's a lot of men who have those mental blocks who go to Marine Corps boot camp or go to the gym, and then the mental blocks go away. That's the difference. There's a lot of these guys who have these blocks, and then all of a sudden they become successful, and a lot of the blocks go away. I'm not saying therapy is unnecessary. I'm just saying the way it's used for men is incorrect. They're taking the tool that they use for women, and then they're applying the same tool to the men.
What tool? Listening to somebody, analyzing them, trying to get them to reach conclusions on their own to understand themselves deeper. I'm telling you right now that if that to you is a woman thing, then that's a good quality to have, and you're a dumb for rejecting that kind of a quality.
A male therapist is called a performance coach. A male therapist is called a personal trainer. A male therapist is called an offensive coordinator. That's what a male therapist is. Okay, a male personally, a male therapist to me is Andrew Huberman and Lex Friedman. A male therapist is someone.
Mental blocks go away is not the same as solving an ongoing issue. True, you're right. That's a good point, and honestly, I kind of should have caught that because he's moving the goalpost there in a way as well. Having mental blocks go away doesn't mean that the underlying issue is gone. That's true. That's exactly what would happen to me and what I'm talking about, where the mental blocks would go away. I'm not feeling bothered by this thing. It's not giving me anxiety or anything else. Okay, I guess I'm over it, right? But no, you're not dealing with it in a healthy way. It gets buried.
Whenever I have conversations with like Myron Gaines or Justin Wall or whatever, when we're talking about business and accomplishing a goal, we all light up. Everyone at the table stops what they're doing. We light up because there's a goal that is going to be accomplished. And like I could just like literally feel like my ancestors' genetics being like, let's work together. You come from this angle, I'm going to come from this angle. We're going to kill this goddamn elephant.
Right,
like we're going to work together. No, it's not just conquerors.
Do we want to take the Honda to go to Starbucks now, or do we want to hit up Target first, bro? It's not that surprising that if men are socialized pretty much from the get-go that you're a man, you need to be a provider. You're a man, you have a mission and a goal, and that is success and wealth, and that is going to also determine, at least somewhat, your sense of self-value as well. When you condition people this way, it's not surprising that those same people later on in life might all get really excited when it comes time to talk about a goal or achieving some kind of a external success. But yet this dude, bro, is coming along and he's like, it's like when we were fighting the elephants, man. For a minute, I had the spirit of a saber-toothed tiger in my ass. And it was amazing, dude.
The teamwork. It's like watching
solving problems.
It's like it's like watching the '87 Lakers just like run like the Showtime Lakers, like watching them teamwork up the court, just throwing the ball. Watching Jerry Rice and Joe Montana teamwork,
building
like watching
things collectively.
Correct.
Yes.
Like watching that teamwork, watching Stockton Malone, those things like that make we admire so much as men working together to accomplish the goal and accomplishing that goal, defeating another group of men. You'd think that would exist somewhere in our ancestral past, and you look at our ancestral past, and that's all it was, because there are no more Neanderthals. You guys wonder what happened to them?
Well, one of them at least got a podcast, right? Congratulations, buddy.
There are no more there's no Australopithecus, there's no Homo habilis, there's no Homo australis. Yes. There were 15 breeds, there are 15 species of hominids on this planet.
Hairless
and now there's one.
Murder ape.
There's just this hairless murder ape called Homo sapiens sapiens is the only one left. We've been around for 200,000 years, and we killed all the other ones because we competed with other we joined bands of other Homo sapiens to kill the other bands of whatever.
Why is he saying this like it's this big in-depth thing? He's explaining evolution. Yeah, dude. Yep. That's how evolution was. Survival of the fittest. It was all big competition.
If we're ever going to have any kind of like effective male therapy, it has to take into account the male experience as something that is separate and set apart from the female experience.
It doesn't have to be from the female or male perspective. It has to be from your perspective, and that's what a therapist does. This is why they ask you usually pointed questions to lead you to certain conclusions that help you reach better understandings about yourself. Like, you're unironically gendering this so much more than it really is or needs to be.
Because that's where we get into trouble with so many things, and not just therapy.
Because I've had so many male friends tell me, like, I don't want to go to therapy, like that stuff. Like, I don't
think there's a
believe in
stigma
that.
around it.
Oh, I would love to go to therapy if there was a therapist who I believe could keep up with me.
Yeah.
Like I think, like I have accomplished things in my life. Have you? And you're going to tell me that I need to do these things. Well, hold on now. I have a family that depends on me. Are you sure when you say these things that what I'm doing is unhealthy?
Are you sure that what you're doing is healthy? Listen, dude, I got a family to provide for, Doc, okay? Are you sure that shot is healthy? Are you really sure?
Now, if you give me a business coach, yes, I'll take that. I'll sit here and listen to Neil Patel talk about how much he works, or I'll talk to Ryan Pineda about how much he works, or Dan Bilzerian, or Ty Lopez, or any of these people.
Feelings, emotions, dealing with your actual childhood, dealing with any kind of problems that you might be feeling internally. Nah, dude, just focus on the money. Remember the famous quote, money can buy happiness? Because I do.
I look at their lives and I'm like, yeah, I want some of that. I want a tenth of that. I want 100th of that. I would be rich beyond my wildest dreams if I had that. I would have so fewer things to worry about. And his son Ike could go to any college in the world without question, and I have no question. What you want to go to Oxford and then go get a PhD from Harvard? I'll pay for it, no problem whatsoever. That's the life I want. And so when that's the case, that's no therapist is going to tell me that's unhealthy. That's my issue.
Yeah,
I have to understand my burden of performance.
A therapist would absolutely tell you not dealing with your emotions and instead just focusing on stacking cash is unhealthy. Yeah.
Hide, like cover up all your problems with money.
No, but I
Well,
need.
then where's your therapy?
The therapy would be the concept of
No, you're just shoving it down to.
No. You still deal with the problems. My point is, if the therapist doesn't have any
How do you deal with the problems? How do you actually deal with them? Going to the gym is a distraction. How do you deal with the actual problem?
regard for the fact of forget money, performance.
Well, that's what you were just saying, though. So how are
No.
you dealing with the problems? You're just covering them up to go to work.
So
you're
second-
getting your mind off of
Got
it
it, got
by
it.
distracting
So-
yourself from something
got it.
else.
So let me provide-
where are you,
got it. So let me
where's
pro-
the
see-
therapy?
See,
So
Where are
what
you
you're
dealing with
talking about
problems?
is deferral.
Yeah, beautiful.
That's,
so
so that's
beautiful.
male therapy? Just
No.
don't
No,
handle your problems,
no.
just
It's not.
cover it up?
But what you're talking about, what you're talking about, is called deferral. But what he's
that's what
talking
we're
about
talking
is
All right,
no.
so let me provide more context. Yes, still with the therapy, the things dealing with approval from your father, and those things are still real, but you must also acknowledge the burden of performance that men have that women don't have. What I'm saying is there's several different boxes to check, 10 boxes. I only talked about one of the boxes, which is
Do you think like you're like the first person to be aware of this? Do you think therapists aren't aware of the way that men are socialized compared to how women are socialized? Really?
if I have a therapist who cannot recognize the burden of performance because they have a salary job where they don't make more money because they work harder, then I can't go to that therapist. It doesn't mean that he's like, hey, this issue that you're having has to do with passive aggressive behavior or whatever. You're suffering from psychosis or whatever. There's still secondary issues a therapist can deal with, but the minimum requirement is they must recognize that I am a man who has to deal with performance. Mm-hmm. If they don't do that, then I can't go to them as a therapist. Does that make sense?
It's true, again, that there are absolutely different social expectations on men versus women. And yeah, he's right that there are different expectations when it comes to performance, when it comes to men being successful and wealthy and everything else. But this sounds like a bit of an unhealthy obsession with performance. He's having performance issues. Stop.
It's just the minimum requirement.
What is the difference between a mentor and a therapist for you? Because it sounds like you're expecting a therapist to be like a mentor. That's the way I perceive it.
Yeah.
It can be both.
It is.
Yeah,
You are
so-
kind
so-
of saying that.
I don't think they're the same thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, so
No, a therapist is not the same as a mentor.
They are
But I think he's saying as a man, that's trying to this conversation highlights the difference. Where for us, all the men have agreed that for us, our therapy would be making progress towards an achievement, and that would be therapeutic
Pulling
for us.
back from it.
Then all the girls don't agree, and I think that highlights the
Well, I
difference
think
between the
a
men and
therapist-
women of what we consider kind of therapy for us and making improvements.
Go ahead.
A good therapist isn't someone that's going to tell you what to do or tell you that you're
Right.
wrong or
Yes.
tell you to be this way or you're a narcissist, you're this, you're that, you're this. It's to help you learn how to work out the problem for yourself.
beautiful.
Correct.
So when I go on TikTok and I look at the most popular therapists, you know what I see?
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there, pal. If your response is but TikTok, then you literally need to shut the fuck up. You literally need to stop talking, cut your mic off.
But when they get 750,000 likes, do you know what other therapists start doing? They start following that. This idea that therapy is
Yup, therapists are getting their advice on TikTok. Oh my god. You need a therapist, a mentor, and a coach all at once. There are medical guidelines therapists have to abide by. If they don't abide by those standards, they could literally lose their license and their job. That's what therapists are doing, guys. They're logging on TikTok to see how to therapy for the day. Holy shit.
It's not being pushed in that direction. You're being naive.
So do
It is being pushed in that direction.
Mentors do the same
No,
thing,
absolutely,
though,
sure,
and
but-
YouTubers
Mentors are
and podcasts,
the only reason I would say
kind of
mentors are
everybody.
different. I would say mentors are different simply because you're there to learn something. Like you are the apprentice and they are the master at something. So you're there to learn something in particular.
Yeah, the other thing is
By someone who has that experience. So if somebody was a car mechanic, you would be they would be your mentor if you wanted to become a car mechanic.
I have people that are mentors when it comes to business, and then they'll ask me questions about like emotional stuff. Like, so I don't think mentoring and therapy are the same thing. If I have a mentor who's teaching me literally how to code in Python to build something, that has nothing to do with my emotional state whatsoever.
Kylie. So let me just say, for sake of
It's kind of actually where you're wrong, because your emotional state can heavily impact your productivity, your motivation, and everything else.
argument, okay, if I was your therapist or I was some psychologist, a clinical psychologist that you came to me and you said, I'm having trouble with sorting out my emotions and my feelings and everything, and I went, go take a lap, go lift heavier weights, right? If I told you something like that, that was my therapy for you to go get in the squat rack, bitch.
That's
if I were to say something like
that's such bad advice. It's like saying like, dude, my foot really hurts. Hey, why don't you go get in your car and go for a little drive? Like, it literally has nothing to do with the problem or how to fix it.
That's
it probably
not
wouldn't
dealing
be.
with the problem.
But
That's distracting yourself from the problem,
exactly.
so you
But
don't have to.
But
deal with the problem.
if the solution to
Yes, go. I love that the opponents on here are actually pushing back.
if the solution to your problem, if there's one solution to your problem, it's going to come differently from a guy than it's going to be from a woman, because we have to have two different ways of approaching those things.
So you're telling me the woman's approach is look inward, figure out what's wrong, actually fix it a healthy way? And the guy advice is stop being a bitch and go work out? Well, the guy way sucks. And if you were willing to look at some nuance, then you'd probably see that really quickly. You'd realize that that's ineffective for anybody or inspiring change in anybody. You're not going to help anybody. You're not giving a sense of therapy. You're literally just making things worse.
I like going to the gym because I find it therapeutic as well for anger issues, so I don't go around punching people and end up in jail. Like, that's great.
Right. So
But if
you're
they're-
so
but like, yeah,
so
but
would you
what they're-
say
like
in
she
that
was-
case?
Jessica-
So you're dealing with emotions then.
So what she's saying, like, you have children who aren't going to go, that are 10 years old, males that aren't going to go to the gym to deal with or whatever. Even if whenever they get older, you're asking them to go I'm sorry that your uncle did things to you when you were a child.
Right. But
go to the
much
squat
different.
rack,
Much
dude.
different. Much different.
You're a
Yes.
dude.
Yes.
Just go to the squat rack. Like, no, that's not actually how you
It's
deal
clinical.
with that problem.
Yeah. So there's a
there
difference
is,
between
like,
therapy and
therapists
going
can
for
be
like.
good for males as well.
Well,
So
there's
this idea-
Now there's going to be a distinction. Now they're adding nuance. They're going to start adding the nuance as to why you're going to therapy. Before it was just therapy bad. Now it's actually therapy might be acceptable at times. Next it's going to be, well, why are they in therapy? They're doing it backwards. Rather than asking all the relevant questions and then coming to a conclusion, they're just asserting some dumb, bold conclusion and then slowly peeling it back as they're challenged on it.
But
that it's
you're
just
going
a
to-
terrible idea is
You're
wrong.
going to treat bipolar disorder, and you're going to treat like actual
Yeah.
clinical psychosis in a much different way than just like therapy, like something happened, a crisis in my life
I'm
that
depressed.
I need to
I'm
deal with.
depressed right now because I have no gratitude is different from clinical psychosis. Those are two different things.
And a lot of
Yeah, and sometimes if you're feeling depressed because of that, then having a deeper understanding as to why that is and steps you can take to actually heal from that and avoid it in the future could be incredibly beneficial.
Whenever I do like personal counseling, like one-on-one counseling, I have a list of policies. I'm very, very specific about that. And one article in there is I reserve the right to refer you to a clinical, somebody who actually has a degree in this. You can come to me. I will give you an analysis of what I see going on with you, but I am not a doctor. I'm no play one on the internet, and I am not a licensed clinical therapist. But if you want my take on I will analyze your situation. But if this guy says, yeah, I clinically have autism or something like that, I'm going to go, well, I'm not the guy you need to talk to. You need to talk to a professional who deals with autistic,
and
problems.
that's respectable that you acknowledge
Yeah.
that and that you're aware of that.
Yeah, but that guy needs psychiatry. He needs that, but it's different from the therapy you're referring to.
Yeah, I can't
A psychiatrist has a
prescribe
yeah,
Adderall.
So are we going to let you decide now who's in therapy for a valid reason and who's not?
A psychiatrist has an MD. Like what you're referring to is somebody who has a licensed therapist who doesn't even have a bachelor's degree. Like we're talking about something completely different. Yes, correct. Like a counselor for sure. And those people are necessary, and I totally understand them. And I wish we had more of them in the U.S. military because people committed suicide a lot in the U.S. military. I totally understand that. But my point is, what's happened is there needs to be what he's saying, because there's been some massive extrapolation here. We're not saying therapy is garbage. We're saying a therapist who is going to be useful to a man must recognize a man is different and must recognize the real world that men live in, where we are regarded based on our performance, no matter how special our mommy tells us we are. Okay? That's the issue. And because there's so little of that, telling men you're depressed because you lost your job, it's because you sucked at your job, bro. That's what they actually need to hear.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's not if the therapist.
No, that's not what you need to hear. First of all, if somebody lost their job because they sucked at their job and they're feeling bad about that, odds are they already know they sucked at their job. So you coming along and literally kicking them when they're down isn't therapy. This is tearing people down even more. This is bringing people lower. Also, how do you know they lost their job because they sucked at it? Maybe they lost their job because of COVID. Maybe there were layoffs. You're an example of somebody who desperately needs therapy, dude. Well, there you guys have it. Don't go to therapy. Instead, just go hit the squat rack. And feelings, what are feelings? I'm too busy making money, cha-ching.